単位は5のテスト。
Hello everybody, and we are JoJo Overdrive, and today we'll be discussing JoJo Part 9 Theories and Predictions. Make sure to comment below your theories and predictions because we do enjoy the discussions. But anyways, where should we start with this?
I think we should probably start with the new image, since that's like our only like real. I mean, we'll go some other stuff later, but the new image is basically the only real stuff we have to go off.
It's the only concrete things we have, and it's just like a boat.
Yeah, on some like rocky shores, and even then, it's so like it's so drawn, so squiggly that it could be.
It's clearly
anything.
just like a sketch, like Araki often does.
Yeah, I don't think. Because a lot of people are being like, because they're taking from the one interview where he said how he wanted to set something in the Scottish Highlands.
Mm-hmm.
I think the image is nowhere near detailed enough to gain that.
It's literally
from
just
that.
a series of islands and a boat, and while it's definitely reminiscent of the Scottish Highlands, it's also reminiscent of anywhere that fits that description. So,
in general, yeah. And I think it's far, far, far more likely than the Scottish Highlands that it's just gonna be the where the Lokaka fruit are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Way more likely. The way they phrase it at the end of Part 8 too, where it's like there's nothing here, but in the islands, and it's literally.
I don't think the
JoJo.
Lokaka are going to be the focus from the very beginning, though. I think it's going to be
I don't think at all.
a mid-story like revelation or something. I think at the beginning it's going to start off different.
I don't think Josuke is going to show up for like 50 chapters.
Yeah,
I don't want him to really.
He has to show up, right? This feels
He
like
has
obvious.
to, yeah. I think all the alive characters from Part 8 have to.
I think Josuke has the highest chance of showing up, but all the other characters, while it's certainly possible, I don't.
I think Yasuo has to be there though with him.
I think it's a high chance. I want that to happen, but it's not like a guarantee or anything. Like, it's like in Part 4, it's just Jotaro there. It's not like Joseph eventually comes, but he comes like way later, and he doesn't even do that much. While Jotaro's like a big part of the plot.
Yeah.
And Polnar shows up on Part 5, but that's just him. So
I mean, Koichi's also in Part 5.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So how are we thinking about like Araki said that the new Joestar would be related to alt universe Joseph in some shape or form. What's our thoughts on how that's gonna show itself?
Okay, I am dead set that it's going to be Kira's son or daughter.
Yeah.
Before he merged, I think that is the easiest way. I don't know why people were so dead set on it being a affair again. Because we literally just did like the Part 4 and 5 redux, so having another Josuke would be like eye-rolling at this point.
It's possible, but it would be not smart of him to do, and I think
trust
it would
be
more than that.
Also, I'm assuming that this is going to be set in 2022.
That makes sense.
Because Joseph is still born at the same time as when he was in the original universe, except now Josuke is being born 30 years later, so you would be having, instead of like a 56-year-old Joseph that's like reasonable, I'm sorry, but having like an 80-90-year-old Joseph being the dad is not as reasonable.
It is a bit ridiculous. It's much more understandable back with original universe Joseph with all the Hamon stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we got to see him a lot more, but for Joseph to just magically be able to live this long out of nowhere would be a very strange choice. So I doubt we're going to see him in the actual main modern timeline, but I do think we'll get a few flashbacks featuring him.
For sure, yeah. The only way I could see him being like the direct is if it's like his direct grandchild from someone before the events of the Part 8 flashback or something, but I still don't. I just think that's too messy, and making Akira would make it direct descendant and it would have some interesting
Implications.
angles they could do with Josuke.
With Josuke, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Would it? Okay, but if Kira fused with Josefumi, then technically, if Josuke had a kid with like Yasuho, or technically someone else, but I hate that. That would also make them a descendant of Joseph Joestar, which would be under the qualification of it. But I feel like that's it would be weird for Araki to specifically mention how he's a descendant of Joseph when he's just the son of Josuke.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit too. You've gone like too far down. It's
also making it a descendant of Kira makes it so that he can set the part anywhere in the world, because he worked as a
ship doctor.
Naval ship doctor. Yeah, so he could have literally gone anywhere.
He was going a lot of places, and JoJoLands, boats, islands,
exactly.
It all connects. Wow. Location-wise, we mentioned the millions of evidence towards Scottish Highlands, but it could also literally be anywhere else. Araki has mentioned that Italy is his favorite place, and we could have, who knows, alt universe Giorno be the main character, and we could set it back in Italy. I don't see that happening, despite how much he loves Italy, but it's not off the table.
I think he revisited Italy in the freaking Rohan one-shots several times.
Yes.
So I don't think we need another whole part
and
there.
He can make more one-shots whenever he wants. So
exactly.
It's not like he needs to restrict himself. I would, after part 8 being set just in Morio the whole time for 10 years, I would enjoy another part where they go a classic Stardust Crusaders where they go to a bunch of different locations. That would be nice.
I think also making it in like Europe instead of more like the Middle East would make it more. Mm-hmm. It would make it just a lot more different for part 8.
Yeah, because we've been to a lot of Asia. We were in Europe for the beginning, then we were in America. I guess like Australia is the biggest continent besides like Antarctica that hasn't been visited at all in any of the parts.
Which could it could totally be a part of this, I think.
Yeah, it would be a fun location. I bet he could do a lot of interesting things with it. What was I thinking about? So in some parts, the villain is like obvious from the outset. Like part 1, it's Dio from the very beginning. Part 1 and part 3 is obvious it's Dio. Part 6, it's Pucci very early on. Kira in the original is like halfway through, and same with Valentine in part 7. Part 8 being the farthest along we've ever revealed the main villain at like the last arc.
The alleged main villain.
Joven believers will understand the true main villain of the part. But do you think he's going to immediately have a villain from the start? Would you want that?
Yeah, I can't deal with that again.
We can't have another Toru.
I think we need it from the beginning, and especially if there's stuff, because I think it's also going to tie back into Diego somehow. So if they wanted to do like his descendant, I think it's from the beginning. After
every single part of the series has, besides part 8, has been like directly influenced by Dio in some shape or form, and it was really strange to see part 8 just completely break that after the entire franchise. So if we could rope that back around somehow, that would be a lot of fun. Diego definitely got around back then, but it would be a far off descendant. It would be a long time. But I would still love to see it. A theory I heard about was main character of the part would be an alt universe Jolene, while the main villain would be alt universe Giorno,
which would be like the best. I think the best option.
Very, very cool. I just hope something like that happens.
I think we're also going to continue the trend of seeing the former bad guy stands. I think King Crimson and Whitesnake, I think, could even Whitesnake specifically. It would be super interesting if it was controlled by someone who was good.
Yeah, a Whitesnake ally would
be
fun.
really cool. King Crimson, though, I don't know what they could keep it a villain, I think.
The reoccurring stands have been very like small, mostly even only like a couple.
Mostly like Easter eggs
yeah.
and it would be direct alt versions of characters.
Mostly because the villain stands are incredibly powerful, except for the one I've totally forgot. We got Hermit Purple at the end of last time, which was
that's true,
and it was slightly
way different though. Yeah,
and we honestly have no idea how that quote-unquote Hermit Purple even functions, because Hermit Purple in Part 3 was just a manifestation of Hamon as in a stand form where it could be like a whip, but as far as we could see, there was no Hamon to it in Part 8.
It could just be a stand that has the same features,
like
all
all the same abilities, or is it literally just like a vine?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. Whether we see Joseph super old or not, I think we'll know by flashbacks or something.
I hope so, but it feels like in the ending of Part 8 with all the Joseph flashbacks, he covered a lot of ground with Joseph's character. Like we saw him hang out with Lucy. We got the origin behind Josefumi's name. We got the stand. We got even the reference to his clackers from Part 2, which was funny. We got a lot out of him, and it feels like he might have been doing that because he knew he wasn't going to use him that much, so he wanted to do everything he wanted to do in a quick amount of time. It would be cool to see more, but I'm not so.
I gotta mention something that was probably a mistake in Part 8, but it's still there and was not fixed for the volume releases, and that's that Josefumi, the present day, or like the semi-present day one, not Joseph, has the birthmark.
Yes.
There is technically a way you could connect it and make it like Joseph's grandson or something.
I'll explain it just in case any of the viewers literally missed this, because it's a one-panel thing, and if you haven't
only in the intro, only in his first appearance.
In the picture that Carrera gives Josuke of Kira, Carrera, and Josefumi, Josefumi has a prominent birthmark, Joestar birthmark on his left shoulder, but it appears we never get a really good angle at it ever again, but there are some shots where it'd be like, you'd probably see the birthmark here, but it's just not present, and we never get an explanation for how he could be a Joestar. Like Kira, we get the direct like family tree and everything, but Josefumi is just completely left out of it, and even in the ending with Joseph, it's literally just explained his name is like that because they found Joseph's sandal, or whatever the proper word for that is. And so people have claimed that it's maybe an error on his part and he meant to put it on Kira's. Well, hopefully not. I would hate to have a big plot hole like that, but it's not impossible to happen.
I think originally he was directly gonna make it a plot line. Like, with the Joseph thing at the end, I think he just changed his mind, honestly.
That makes sense. Maybe he intended the Joseph flashback to be earlier, and to have Josefumi be like the Josuke equivalent, like you said, where he cheated on...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could make sense, and he just dropped that, which is entirely possible.
I honestly don't find it that egregious, especially because in spirit he's still JoJo. The naming convention works.
Yeah. And it doesn't affect the plot whatsoever. Even All right, so we've had a lot of in the new universe. It's mostly just like small groups for the main protagonists, like Gyro and Johnny, and Josuke and Yasuo and Mamazuku at the halfway point. And even then, they mostly just split up into pairs if they do gain any new, like, quote-unquote party members, as opposed to the old parts, which would have large casts. Are we thinking, like, the trend is still leaning towards smaller groups, or are we going for a big cast?
I think Stardust Crusaders' size is the perfect cast.
Like about 6. Most of the old ones are about 6.
Yeah.
They
end with one one member being like an animal or something else is, I think, a good balance. Like Iggy, I think
Like
Iggy
Iggy was great, even though Iggy was just obviously like he wanted another character, so he just dropped him.
And it feels like almost cool. in part 7 the horses almost become like characters of their own.
Yeah, they have their own references and everything, and you can like track where they go and everything.
So it feels kind of like they're part of a party when it's such a small group in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because we see at the cast sizes kind of go in like a curve. It starts out in part 1 where it's literally just mostly Jonathan for a lot of it, with like Speedwagon tagging along, and then Will dies, so it's just them, and then it kind of goes up every single part. Like the amount of people kind of grows until I guess this like average of like 6 or 7, where like people drop out and people join back in, but then it immediately drops in part 7, which I think is maybe he wanted to focus on like growing the individual characters more, and he felt that like he didn't have enough time to with the others. Like he might be trying to avoid another Fugo scenario where he invested like a good chunk into him, but then he just kind of had to drop him, and so it didn't end up being anything significant. And so if he does like less characters, he can put more character into the single characters. But man, I miss those big teams, those dynamics. It was always fun. Like watching part 6 again when it was airing and seeing all the interactions between them. It's a lot of fun. It's like I miss that.
Especially the end group, I think is having Jotaro there. It makes it like the elite.
Yeah.
If you had Jotaro and Weather Report at the same time in the group, it would be like the best JoJo group easily.
Yeah, it definitely would be. But like power scaling wise, it would have been a bit too much. Weather Report is crazy. Yeah. Star Platinum is crazy. It would have been.
But in terms of like team dynamics and not counting the stands, it would have been fun. But I think he wrote it well for it.
Absolutely.
And they gave respect to Foo Fighters in the anime.
Yes. Oh my god, I was so happy to see that. So we kind of like skimmed over the protagonist theories, but it's gonna be an alt universe, Jolene or Giorno, like 99%. But is there a chance? Sure. Is there even a chance for something else? Like, do you think it's completely possible? Because
alternate universe. Well, technically he already exists. We're gonna get George Joestar. We're gonna see his life story in the 40s.
We're gonna get Nicholas Joestar from part 7 back, Johnny's brother.
They're gonna revive Nicholas.
They're gonna revive Nicholas, and he's gonna become Nicholas, and that's who he's gonna be.
I think we're kind of running out now. I mean, because he said specifically that it's a descendant of Joseph, he totally kills all the theories of like the alternate like brothers and sisters that are on the family tree. Yeah. That we don't see about. So I don't know. I think it's alternate. Alternate Jolene, daughter of Kira, easy.
Yeah, that does make sense, because Kira is already the half Jotaro equivalent. So having daughter of Jotaro, daughter of Kira.
The ages would also work out if we have a 11-year time gap. Mm-hmm. That gives like a totally like big range if you want the character to be 15 to 20.
Yeah, Kira's like 25, 26.
28. No, 28. Yeah.
What the hell? What? It's just so weird because Josefumi in that part's like 17. And I always
29 actually. I just checked. It's because
Jesus.
And then I believe Josefumi is 19.
He's 19? Okay.
Yes. So I remember that because they're 10 years apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just always so funny because I always see them as like a duo, and so I just imagine they're around the same age. And Kira already looks pretty young. He's drawn. Most characters are drawn pretty young.
It's because Kira's like the age of Jotaro.
Oh, like at that time,
Yeah, it's like pretty much lines up with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, totally. I didn't even think about that before. But yeah, that makes complete. I was thinking more towards closer to Kira's previous universe age, but because he was 33 or whatever. But actually, yeah, because Jotaro would be younger. You're right. That totally does make sense. So in part 8, a thing that people were always theorizing about back when the part was coming out is that when Carrera leaves, she says she's gonna come back, and then she doesn't come back for the entirety of
She's
part
not
8.
coming back.
Do you
She's
think?
not
Do you
coming
think
back.
she's in part? No
No.
hope.
No.
She's just
No
gone.
way. 0% chance.
0%. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's 0% chance.
No way. I think they mention her a tiny bit at the end of part 8, and I think that's it. I think that was his way of wrapping it up. I just think he didn't know how to use her. I think it's done.
I'm holding out for the removing all the dropped part 8 plot points to be filled in by the next part.
I think a lot of part 8 stuff's gonna be there. I think we're gonna go back to Morio.
So
for part 8.
you think that part 9 is just going to be a complete sequel part, essentially?
I think
where all the main plots.
I think the first half of it is going to be something very like original, and then halfway through the part we're gonna somehow some revelation is gonna come, and we're gonna realize the Lokaka fruit is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
He's then gonna meet up with Josuke in it, and we're gonna somehow tie that back into the Gashikaras. We're gonna tie that into everything. I think 7, 8, 9 are gonna be just a trilogy because part 8 is very connected to part 7, even though it's over 100 years later.
Yeah, part 8 is very connected to part 7, but again, it did not seem like that at first, like at all.
Exactly. So I think it's gonna be the exact same thing where for a bunch of it we don't think it's connected to it really, and then we find out there's more there. I think obviously Spin's gonna keep going as a plot thing, and yeah.
While the Holy Corpse
Flow
was
too.
like,
That's gonna be
Flow. Yeah, Flow. The Holy Corpse was like it's a big plot point in part 8, but not like too big. It's more like a behind the scenes kind of like thing that like, oh, it made the walleyes happen because it's a devil palm now or whatever, and so it like technically caused everything to happen, but it's not like majorly like focused on throughout part 8. But part 7, of course, it was the main like plot thread. Do you think that the Holy Corpse is gonna come back like completely into action by the end of it? Like it's the main
that would be
goal
like
of someone.
awesome. I think that would be awesome if that was the like villain's main goal or something to tie it in, because I assume it still exists.
Yeah.
And tying that in, I think the Devil's Bomb is going to be a massive.
It's been a hot second since I've looked at like the ending part 8 chapters, but I believe the Speedwagon Foundation is holding on to it in like a bunker right now.
Because Johnny takes it and then the government gets it back.
Gets it back, so it's currently there.
As far as we know, if we don't get a prequel or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Something could have happened unknown to us. It's huge time gap. That's part 7 to 8 is like the biggest time gap in the series, and it's pretty crazy. 100 yeah, I'm thinking because 100 years was the amount of time Dio was underwater in the coffin in the original, and that was part 1 to all the way to part 3, and that's just part 7 to 8. So that's pretty crazy. Oh,
yeah,
what if Diego is in the coffin, the underwater the whole time, and we didn't know, and now he's back? His head, yes.
That would be interesting.
Great. He's in a jar.
And then he gets Made in Heaven Ultimate Requiem going on.
Yes, exactly. Precisely. And then that would be the best series ever. There's kind of like the unofficial like trilogy theory or whatever, kind of made by fans, which I kind of like go along with until
I definitely agree with
until
it,
until part 9 in some way breaks that cycle, which it seems like absolutely it's not going to, from all the hints we've gotten so far. So it goes that like part 1, 2, and 3 like make some sort of trilogy because it has Dio at the beginning and then it ends with Dio at the end. And then part 4, 5, and 6 kind of like expand upon that with the stand arrows and the like legacy. They kind of like go out, and then it ends at part 6, and then it's like a super that's done. It's completely finished. So that's obviously like a trilogy, and so we're just left with 7, 8, and 9. But what's interesting is that the final parts in each of the trilogy are always like massive, like. For the lore, they always have like massive events. Like Stardust Crusaders is like the ends with Dio dying, which is huge for the series, and then part 6, of course, is like the most bonkers ending of the whole franchise. So I'm just saying, looks like for part 9, there's a high chance we're gonna get into some pretty crazy
We're gonna get a
shenanigans.
crazy ending. Yeah.
I think that Araki, after writing JoJolion, which is a very tame part in terms of stand powers and everything, and scale wise,
except for Wonder Review,
which was obvious. He had something cooking there. He was like just waiting to put it out. I think after all of that, he's gonna go full like crazy mode for part. He's gonna
especially if Josuke's a part of the party and he has freaking soft and wet go beyond arguably the strongest stand.
Yes.
Like
besides like the issue with later like more powerful stand ability power scaling is that it eventually just becomes like we don't even know how they interact, because if Gold Experience Requiem was to go up against Go Beyond, would Soft and Wet's Go Beyond bubbles affect
but they don't exist.
But they don't exist. That's the issue. Araki gets into such these high concepts that you can't like scale them properly. So Josuke would in some way, I feel, have to be out of most of the fights because his power is already too insane. Or you could pull apart 4 and say, oh, his powers have kind of weakened. He hasn't really figured out what he's doing.
I mean, that's exactly what they did with Jotaro, because he knew that if he had Jotaro practice it and he had freaking 20-second time stop,
that would be crazy.
Be just absurd, yeah.
And even Jotaro is not in a lot of fights in part 4. He goes up against the rats. He's up against Sheer Heart Attack, and then he doesn't do anything until the very end, I believe. Yeah,
but he
gets the dub.
He's the guy.
He's that guy, pal. Yeah. So, Go Beyond, I think, is even stronger, arguably, than Time Stop because it has the invincible bubble shot that cannot be deflected by anything in this universe. So it would probably be a bad idea to use that for every stand encounter, or if you somehow just make Go Beyond worthless in a fight. So I think he's just gonna mostly be like a super sidelined. I think he's just gonna be like kind of there-ish, but he's not gonna actually get a chance to interact in any fights.
Also, I'm just gonna address this about how we were saying how we think this is gonna get crazy at the end. Mm-hmm. I do not think we are going to be seeing legit multiverse crossover with the original universe. That is not something Araki wants to do. That is what Eyes of Heaven is for.
Eyes of Heaven is the fun, goofy video game, and I think we can leave that there and have... I want the Steel Ball Run JoJolion JoJoLands trilogy to be its own, like, thing. Like, sure, you, like... Yeah. Like, the part skipping controversy is, like, a kind of a big thing, but I would say if you were to start at Steel Ball Run, there's technically that's like the best place if you were to
only
not
other
just go
part,
like 1, because 7 is obviously a like soft reboot. It is the only references are like basically they're just Easter eggs essentially, like, and mostly like there's a lot of cool moments with like, oh, your expectations based on the previous characters are broken. Like, you
Kira.
think Kira is evil in part 8, but he's not. But that's not, like, the most major thing at all time, because the characters straight up tell you, I think Kira is evil and bad, and then he isn't. So, it would be very nice to have just a good, like, trilogy stand on its own without needing, oh, guys, look, we're getting the other 6 parts. We have... And
then all of the JoJos come together and they fight Dio, Maiden Heaven, Requiem. Like, we've done that already.
We did that. That's been covered.
It's not a coincidence that the people that are spouting that they want that for Part 9 are the people that haven't actually read any of the new universe.
That's true.
And they don't know. Honestly, I think most people that say that haven't read most of JoJo.
Unfortunately, this is just the reality we live in.
Yeah, and I think that is like the exact opposite thing of what Araki would ever want to do.
We live in JoJolion is in a very disappointing state where, because it was not finished for so long, people would not read it. And now, because a new part is starting, people are gonna want to skim or entirely skip part 8 so they can join in on the part 9 hype train.
Which is going to be hilarious because this is going to tie into part 8. Like, I think He can't not make it.
It can't, at least at the start it's not going to, but it did. Even the same thing happened with part 8. At first it was like, this is unrelated entirely, and then it was like, oh, never mind, everything is directly connected. And that's just a shame, because part 8 is so good, and yet it's getting the part 6 treatment of, oh, you just gotta go through it to get to part 7, but now it's, oh, you just gotta get through it to get to part 9. It's like, come on. Even when it was finished, people wouldn't read it.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts about the new universe is how connected he's made it, because there was stuff, like, in the original universe, the parts feel very separate, and, like, there's been interviews with Rocky where he was like, I wasn't gonna put Polnareff in part 5, but then people were, like, begging for him, and he, like, didn't even realize that was, like, a thing he should do, is bring back Polnareff, and so it's like, now I think he realizes that keeping things more connected is, like, better for storytelling rather than forgetting about a lot of things. Like, you spend a lot of time with these characters that you want to see them again.
Yeah, definitely. See, he's definitely improved in that part. Having Johnny get a whole few, like, having Johnny get, like, an ending in part 8 with everything.
Yeah. And
that directly led into the story of part 8 was a very nice touch that adds a lot to it. But eventually, like halfway through part 8, the story kind of, after Josuke solves all his memory problems and everything, it kind of diverges into its own stuff with the.
I honestly think at that point, in the story, in the very like 2 arcs after Vitamin C, I don't think he knew what he wanted to do with the story. Yeah,
I think he knew he wanted to continue because he didn't feel satisfied with Josuke just knowing, okay, now I know who I am. But he, like, I love that he goes to the end of Josuke's, like, narrative where, like, oh, now he knows who he is, not just, like, oh, physically, but, like, as a person, which is very nice. But I don't think he knew how he wanted to get there. But I don't think that's going to be a problem with part 9, because he's just spent a year and a half, basically.
This is going to be the longest break by, like, times 2, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, because from part 6 to part 7 was, like, almost a year, I think, and now we're over that. Way over that. And, so I believe he's, like, taken. I think he recognizes a bit of his own flaws, hopefully, and is gonna, like, kind of like, okay, I've planned out way more in advance, because parts 7 to 8 was a month gap. He just went straight into it. He didn't stop. He literally just went right into it. And he mentioned in interviews that he had already, like, done an outline for 7, 8, and 9, but
in 2004.
Before part 7 was even out, he said I'd written out this outline for these 3 parts. But it's I think stuff like, the guy from, I think he was, like, the main protagonist of part 8 will be, like, he'll be, like, he won't have his memories, and you'll find out that he's connected to the Joestars or whatever, and that's, like, probably some other stuff. But that's probably all he had lined out, and when he got more interested in Josuke as a character, he kind of wanted to be
really only knew the curse thing. I think he knew that he wanted to do about curses and stuff.
Yeah. And
that was what, yeah.
And do you... Okay, so the curse stuff was... It's like half explained, like, where it came from in the story. It's kind of just like a... It's hardly touched upon. Do you think... Even though JoJolion was heavily focused on breaking the curse, do you think we can get more info on it? Because it's a pretty major thing, like, oh, every single one of these Higashikatas just suddenly starts dying when they're a kid. This is probably important, but we don't ever get, like,
it.
We don't ever really get why. I'm trying to remember. I swear they mentioned something, but I think it just kind of it's implied it has to do with Johnny and the corpse, but it doesn't explain that much. It's just like, oh, because he took the Holy Corpse's power and then died. It transferred to the bloodline, I guess, but it's pretty vague.
I think, honestly, I don't think he's gonna address that at all.
I mean, that's fine, I guess. You could leave it in its own part. That was, like, the main... JoJolion is a story about breaking a curse. I understand that.
I'm just intrigued by the name, and even to him just adding the has, like, changed my... what I'm kind of thinking about it, the JoJoLands just is so
JoJoLands
broad.
versus
It's
the
crazy.
JoJoLands. It's like it feels like significant. Like these are the JoJoLands. It's like not like just a general. It's JoJoLands. That these are JoJoLands. It's like these are the JoJoLands. This is important.
It could refer to England with part 1 being the origin of the Joestar.
I've heard many a thing about that.
It could refer to the islands with the Lokakaka fruit. It could refer to Morio. It won't. There's no way that he's gonna just I don't think there's any possibility that he starts the part out in Morio.
Okay.
I would also not like that.
we're a bit farther. We're pretty far into this video now, so I'm gonna start mentioning a couple crackpot theories before we wrap this up. So, what if the JoJoLands is like they're gonna travel the world, collecting quote unquote a bunch of different Joestars. Like they're gonna assemble like a team or whatever. That would be kind of crazy, and I would kind of like that.
Is there enough though to make that like a long running thing? I don't know if there's enough alive with the birthmark.
They could make up more. That's totally possible.
I mean, he could.
We're ignoring the fact that the series could also take place 10 years in the future, 2032.
That's true.
That's not an impossibility. It's not like too far ahead, and there could be more people at that point. Definitely. There's a lot of branches all around the world. That would be a lot of fun.
The location is everywhere.
Are we feeling like with the teaser image sketch focusing on Navy, like kind of aquatic stuff with the lake and the boat? Are we thinking that, ironically, for the part not focused on the guy wearing a sailor outfit, do you think we're getting like a JoJo One Piece, where it's gonna be primarily on the water and like have like pirates, but like
it would be cool,
pirates?
but I feel like setting a part on the water would be like the most boring thing after a while, especially because unlike One Piece, this takes place in the real world, like
in a close equivalent. Yes, in the closest possible equivalent.
So it would just be water. You know what I mean? It would. You couldn't really do. You could maybe have like a few islands and stuff, but it just wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be that interesting to do it all in the water. And then of course in 2 months when he reveals it as a pirate part.
Yeah, so we'll be like, oh, but he's such a genius. What intellect? Do you okay in the first chapter? The first chapter of part 7 doesn't even have Johnny in it. The first chapter, of course, of JoJolion has Josuke in it, but he doesn't even say anything really. Do you think we're gonna start off from the beginning, focused on the Joestar?
Yeah, 100%. I was reading his manga theory techniques book, and he talks about a lot about the first chapter and how he wants to hook people, and how that was like the number one thing he learned when he was younger, when he failed with stuff, was that the first chapter has to hook people. And I think the first chapter of Steel Ball Run's like kind of an outlier because it's the only one where it doesn't have the Joestar in the first chapter. And I think it's very attention grabbing with the Native Americans in the beginning. And then you get to Gyro at the end.
Yes, with Gyro's at the very end.
That was also weekly, you have to remember.
Yes, at the very beginning was weekly. Yeah, that's right.
I think it was less of a push to get that Joestar in there. I think 100%.
Yeah.
And we'll see his character and we'll see his stand.
Tying into my insane theories or whatever. Is it possible that we get the villain in chapter 1, like part 1? Do you think he'd do that in the first chapter? We wouldn't know.
The only possibility is if it's someone we've already met before in a previous part, which I don't think it's going to be. But I'm saying hypothetically, if it was somehow Diego, somehow a rock human or something, somehow I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying there is a significant point made in part 8 that Wonder of You and Calamity just doesn't have a user, and it just like exists as a spiritual concept. So do you think Wonder of You would make its grand return in some shape or form? He kills Wonder of You at the end, man.
I'm gonna say something here that's a bit like this is like my most crackpot theory. The final on the JoJolion volume releases, they always have the spine banner, like the image where if you line up all the book spines, it makes like a long sprawling image. The final volume is the left half of Wonder of U's face. Part 9, what if it has the right half of his face and it goes off of that? I'm just saying, why would he end it on half of an image?
Because he ended it on odd numbered or even number album, whatever.
Yeah, but he could have just moved the image slightly to the left.
No,
it's totally like that. Hold on.
You can dream.
I don't want that to happen. I'm fine with Wonder of You ending when it did. I'm just saying.
No, we know Part 8's your favorite.
No,
and
this is
not all of those plot lines.
All of the plot. I would love.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
Toru returns.
This is the final thing I'm gonna mention. Flashback Man, famous Flashback Man. Me editing this in the future. Put image on screen right here. This guy, is he in Part 9 somehow?
Obviously, Araki wouldn't put something that he wouldn't follow up on in this.
Yes, he would never do that. I'd give it a good 5%. Like it's a solid. He could look back at his old story. I legitimately think there's a
5% that they'll tie that in. I also think what I would want somehow, if the stand has to do with alternate universes, like D4C again, not like multiverse, like alternate universe of the core universe, we have to see the flash forward. As an alternate universe.
You bring back the flash forward?
Bring back the flash forward.
That would be kind of crazy though, actually.
I think, the last thing I'll say is that this is gonna be most likely the end of JoJo, unless he does a 5-year part, which is possible. He could do 65 chapters.
After doing such a long part, he could do like a shorter one. It's definitely possible.
I think pretty much everyone's like, we're gonna strap in for a 10-year part.
That's what it seems like. Yeah, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't.
Even though I'm kind of curious why they wouldn't advertise it as the last part. I guess because he doesn't know for sure what the future's hold. And there's theoretically enough time he could do a part 10.
Absolutely.
I think that we're gonna get a conclusion to JoJo at the end of it.
Like, you think it's gonna be like a super wrap up? It's gonna be the part 6 of the new universe, is what you're saying?
Yes, it's gonna be part 6, but I don't think we're gonna get the stuff. Obviously, he's not gonna retread it, so it's not gonna be anything like erasing the part or anything. I think it's just gonna be the ultimate like triumph over evil. I mean,
yes, good. That's what I
triumph
want to
over evil.
Yes, as has been the theme of JoJo since day 1. So
exactly,
I don't expect anything to change, and I don't want that to change.
Or this entire part will just be Joseph versus Toru in the 1950s.
Sure, why not? It could. Yeah. That's literally It could just be that. We have no reason to assume that it continues a single thing. This whole discussion could literally be the worst aged thing in the history of the universe.
It'll be funny though.
This part could take place in the year 3000.
3,500.
Yeah, exactly. And we would just be shocked. That's how weird we could get at this point. But if it's that, I would be happy no matter what. I'm happy we're getting a next part anyway. He could have literally just been like, part 8's done. I'm done.
Part 8.
I'm done. I'm in my 60s. I can retire.
Have his millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, this seems like a good place to conclude. Unless you have anything else to say, which I don't really. So, cool. Thank you, everyone, for watching JoJo Overdrive. Make sure to like and subscribe, and always, please comment down below, because I want to see the JoJo community's theories about this.
Crackpot theories.
I wanna hear the most craziest things. I want you to say why poor Tom from Part 8 is the true main villain of Part 9. I wanna hear your rationality for that. All right, thank you, everyone, and we will be back for another video soon enough.
Drive. Coming through now. Coming through now. Coming through. Watch where you're going. Hold the drive. Let the downside up the top notch. Whatever haters do. Hot top.